Hello and welcome to my presentation on just war theory, which will be my Concept 3 project. I will be applying the centuries-old just war theory doctrine and applying it to the distant future of the Human Covenant War in the Halo franchise. The just war theory doctrine originated in the 4th century. Its creator was St. Augustine of Hippo, and it is a derivement of all of his thoughts and other philosophers' thoughts, most notably Greek philosophers such as Plato, Aristotle, and Cicero, and their takes on the war. It was originally designed to address the ethical and moral dilemmas of Christian soldiers serving in Caesar's army, as they would have to commit acts of violence that went against their faith. The doctrine is still used to this day to examine whether wars are fought justly or not, which is exactly what we will be doing with this project. So, examining jus ad bellum, there have been criteria that have been established by philosophers over the years. The main four being that the cause of the war has to be just, and it has to be declared by the right authority, meaning that it has to be a figurehead of a country, aka like a president, or some sort of other leader, whether that is a body of elected officials. Um, and the intent must be to bring about peace. It cannot be for personal or selfish gain. It has to be about peace. And the war must be fought proportionally, meaning it must be controlled and civilian populations are not to be targeted. Um, Regarding just postbellum, it is a highly debated topic amongst people, philosophers, or anyone really examining wars using just war theory doctrine in the modern era. There are guidelines to follow, though they may conflict with each other depending on how you go back and look at these things. The demands must be reasonable, meaning the reparations demanded have to be within reason. They can't go overboard and cause calamity amongst the losing faction. The collateral damage has to be justified, which typically clashes with the demands, as a lot of what you see when examining past victories, uh, the reparations target the civilians disproportionately, as they mainly cause a lot of like economic ruin, which you mainly see at the end of World War One. If you look at Germany through a neutral perspective, their civilian population was heavily targeted by the reparations imposed on them by the Allied forces. Um, there has to be a distinguishment between combatants and civilians, and non-combatants must be treated with respect. Jumping into my first example, which is the Spartan 2 program, it was originally designed to suppress insurgents through lethal force, utilizing covert ops. Um, these soldiers were enhanced technologically and augmented. They were put through rigorous training that often would result in fatalities. There were only 15 known survivors of the program. These enhancements allowed them to stay calm and have better reflexes during battle, enhance strength, just basically everything that a perfect soldier would require while fighting. They also had cutting edge weaponry and armor that included overshielding and AI um, assistance with the armor that would help these soldiers discern objectives and maybe even potentially give them a strategic advantage in battle. Notable Spartans such as John 117 contributed significantly to key battles that turned the war in humanity's favor, and as a result of this, caused the Spartans to be remembered as humanity's last hope. When examining this perspective, you can say that the Spartan program was in fact justified. Their goal of humanity was to survive the onslaught of the Covenant Alliance. Uh, they did this by engaging in all sorts of warfare, including in space. We've seen multiple examples of this, especially most notably in Halo 2, of Spartan 117 actually scuttling a Covenant ship by returning one of their bombs that they planted on a UNSC frigate on one of their ships, which he returned and then detonated, causing the Covenant ship to explode and collapse. They fought until peace was achieved in 2553, meaning a treaty was signed between the Splinter faction and the UNSC. The Covenant Army did in fact split. I will go more in depth in that later on, and they made no demands despite the massive losses that they suffered throughout the war. Uh, when looking at this in hindsight, everything that they did was just. They didn't engage in any disproportionate warfare. It was mainly just about survival. The Covenant had better technology than them, despite their loss. It really just came down to strategic victories, which is why humanity won. When examining the Covenant Alliance, we see that the alliance was formed by the three prophets: truth, regret, mercy. They are all pictured in the second picture down below, and they united a bunch of races to join them on the great journey by activating the halo rings, which would allow them to transcend their beings. Not really too much of an explanation there, nor do we get one in game. However, it was really just an excuse to wipe out humanity, and this truth was uncovered by the current arbiter, Thel 'Vadam, ironically, who was supposed to be redeeming himself in the eyes of the prophets for his great failure of losing installation 004 to Spartan 117. The cause of the war was not just by any means. They used a religious war as an excuse to exterminate a race, or attempt to, anyways. They lied to their troops, making their losses in the name of the Great Journey pointless, and their attacks on civilian populations wiped out entire planets, making them uninhabitable. It was a very disproportionately fought war on their half, meaning it was not justified. In conclusion, just war theory was derived to ease the minds of soldiers who fought in war. Just as bellum requires there to be a cause and the goal of the war to be peace, whereas just post bellum requires the victors to distinguish between combatants and civilians and make reasonable demands. Despite its origins, the Spartan program was in fact justified and in their efforts. Despite the dark origins of it, they did come out as a paragon of humanity and ended up saving them, whereas the Covenant, in their attack on humanity, was not justified because they fought disproportionately and it was not a just war, as their intent was not to seek peace at all. Thank you for watching, and I hope you learned a lot from this.